Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sandy Smith. We warmly welcome the family of Sergeant Lionel Timothy Watson, whose story will be told shortly by Flight Lieutenant Christopher Voigt of the Royal Australian Air Force, who is Sergeant Watson's great-nephew. This evening, we are honoured to acknowledge Air Vice Marshal Mohammed Shafi, Assistant to the Chief of Defence Force and Head of Personnel, Indonesian Air Force, accompanied by Rear Admiral James Lybrand, Royal Australian Navy, and Senator Kerry-Ann Liddle and the accompanying delegations. We warmly welcome Greg Hood, representing the Air Force Association, and one recruit training unit from the Royal Australian Air Force Base in Wagga Wagga. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament. Flowers of the forest, wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant Lionel Timothy Watson. Lionel Watson was born in Sydney on the 2nd of July 1921, one of 5 children born to Frederick and Edith Watson. Lionel grew up in the suburbs of Sydney and attended Petersham Intermediate Boys High School, where he was known as a keen sportsman. He went on to find employment as a shipping clerk and was working as a pay and ledger clerk when the Second World War broke out in 1939. Lionel was 18 years old when war was declared. He immediately sought to enlist in the Air Force, but with few training spaces available for new airmen, he was put on the reserve list until one could be found for him. On the 3rd of July 1940, the day after his 19th birthday, Lionel was called up for service with the Royal Australian Air Force. He began training, undertaking courses across the country to prepare him for active service abroad. In February 1941, he received his Air Gunner's badge at the Bombing and Air Gunnery School at Evans Head. Watson soon embarked from Sydney and began his journey to the Middle East. He arrived in Egypt at the beginning of May before being sent to Somalia, where he was briefly attached to the Royal Air Force Radio School. In 1941, he travelled to Kenya, where he joined the East Africa Air Headquarters at Mombasa. On the 25th of August, Watson was posted to No. 70 Operational Training Unit and was sent inland to the unit's base at Nakuru. There, he and his comrades were trained to operate in Middle Eastern conditions, predominantly flying Bristol Blenheims. Sergeant Watson completed his training by early October, at which point he joined his first operational unit, No. 55 Squadron, Royal Air Force. Based out of Fuka in Egypt, the squadron had been undertaking day bombing missions on enemy targets in North Africa. By the time Watson joined in October, the squadron was undertaking a series of anti-shipping sweeps in the Mediterranean Sea. Many of his early missions were of this nature. On the 12th of November 1941, Watson took off from Fuka with 2 of his comrades in Blenheim 9549. Their aircraft was one of 8 detailed to investigate a report of unidentified ships northwest of Derna on the Crete-Benghazi line. With the aircraft operating in pairs, Watson and his comrades began sweeping the area, having the advantage of perfect visibility. After conducting a thorough sweep, nothing of note was found and the aircraft began returning to Egypt. While the number of Blenheims landed at Sidi Baruni, Blenheim 9549 carried on towards Fuka. Not long into its descent towards the airstrip, the pilot appeared to lose control of the aircraft, which crashed into the ground. On impact, the 2 bombs that had not been used on their mission exploded, killing all those on board. It was later discovered the Blenheim had run out of petrol, causing the crash. In a letter to Watson's father, the Air Board wrote, "The members of the board desire me to extend to Mrs. Watson and yourself their sincere sympathy in your great loss. It is hoped that you will both find a measure of consolation in the fact that your late son's life was given in the service of the Empire." Watson and his comrades are interred at El Alamein War Cemetery in Egypt, where his remains lie beneath the inscription chosen by his family. Bravely, he did his duty. Sergeant Lionel Watson was 20 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed by the Pool of Reflection. This is one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant Lionel Timothy Watson, who gave his life for us, our freedoms, in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. at the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.